Hi everyone. In the last video we set up a camera using Cinemachine inside of our scene, and in this particular video we're actually going to set up a um, pause menu that will actually pause the gameplay in our scene when we hit a particular key. So we can start making our pause menu by creating some UI objects inside of our scene. So I'm going to just jump out to the hierarchy panel, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new UI canvas, and I'm just going to call this canvas pause menu. We'll call it pause canvas. And we're going to add to this canvas, we're going to go down to UI. We are going to add, where is it? A panel, okay? And what a panel basically is a generic background graphic. You can always switch this background graphic out with another sprite, but this will just be, I guess, a placeholder for ours. And what we could do is we can resize this panel up inside of our canvas's view. So I'm going to back out here. And I'm going to turn on the manipulator tools. And I'm going to reduce the size of this like this. And I'm going to reduce it in this direction. And this direction as well. And that should do it. I want to make sure it is centered in our screen. You can click and drag, and if it makes it easier, you can enter orthographic mode and double click your canvas. And you can see here it's got some snaps to it too. So if I select that panel and I drag this around, we should be able to snap it to specific areas inside of our window here. All right, so one thing, it's translucent at the moment. We can edit this panel with the color. So I'm going to go over to color, and I'm going to grab the alpha channel and crank that up to 255. And you can also edit the color of it. So I'll add some color to that as well. Make it like a darker gray. All right, so inside of this, I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to go to our Text Mesh Pro and add some text here. And we should have some sample text inside of our scene. We're going to just label this pause menu. Where did my text go? There it is. This needs to be a bit smaller. Menu. And I think we're going to have to increase the width and height of this to make it visible. So I'm going to make this 200 by 100. And it still doesn't seem to be visible in my view here. So I'm going to move it around a bit to see what's going on. Alright, so I guess the font size is just really small. So we'll just increase that a bit here. And set this to 0 and 0. It still doesn't seem to be showing up at the moment. Now I may have created the wrong one here. Let's delete this one and try this again from the hierarchy panel. So I'm going to go up here, go to UI, and then select Text Mesh Pro. Ah, there it is. All right, so we're going to call this one pause menu. And what we're going to want to do is make sure that the width and the height of this is large enough, and the justification is correct. So I'm going to put this in the middle, and let's see, position in the Y and Z is 0. So I think this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change him so that his anchor is in the middle. Yeah. And change its position in the Y and Z to 0 because we don't need it to stretch out the entire length and width of the screen. All right, so this one, we jump back into it. Let's move the pause menu text so it's up and in the middle of the screen here. And there we go. So we might have some buttons on here, and for those buttons, what we can do is, let's see, let's create 2 buttons. I'm going to create a UI Text Mesh Pro button, and I'll just duplicate this. And I'll call this one continue. And I will call the other one, the other button here, I will call that one quit. And what we can do is move these buttons apart. So I want quit at the bottom. I'll change the text on here to quit. And I will change the text on the other button to continue. All right, so I've got the continue and I've also got the quit button. And now what we're ready to do is basically make this thing visible and invisible when the scene is paused. So what I'll do here is I want to grab the pause canvas here, and I'm going to want to set this thing to active and inactive. And the other thing you can do too here in the canvas scaler mode is set this to scale with screen size. And oh, made it a little too big. I should be able to take this and basically resize it. I should have probably set that to begin with. So I'm going to grab everything here and then make it smaller so that it fits onto the screen here. All right, so I've got the menu with the 2 buttons. The next thing would be to make it appear and disappear when we hit certain keys on our keyboard. So what I'm going to do is create a new script here. So I'm going to jump into the scripts, and we'll create a new script. I'm going to call it pause menu. Well, I called it pause memu. And make sure that if it does happen to you that you change that inside of the class, because the class needs to be the same name as the function. There's a variable we're going to add here. It's going to be for the pause menu itself. So we're going to create a public game object, and this game object is going to be the menu. Once we have the menu created, what we'll then do is set it inactive. So we'll say pause menu dot set active to false. And what this set active does is it allows you to basically turn those game objects on and off, which is a pretty common way of making things visible in your scene, or not visible, or active or not active inside of your scene. So you can do this with all types of game objects, not just these menu objects. All right, so once that is inactive, we're going to need some sort of input to detect when we're actually pausing this thing. So let's head over to Unity and check our inputs. So I'm going to go up to Edit and then down to Project Settings. and then we'll go to the input manager here, and you can see we've got a couple here. What we can end up doing is using the cancel here. So I'm going to make this 19. And the second cancel, what I'll do is I'll set it to pause. And this should be working off of the escape key. Okay, and if you were using a controller, you might want to change it to a different controller button depending on what controller you're using. Alright, so we've got pause in there. I'm going to head back to Visual Studio here. And inside of this menu, we're going to create a condition that's going to check for the player input for the escape key. So I'm going to say input dot get button down, or get button to get button down, and we're going to look for the pause button. And somehow I got outside of my quotes here. Alright, so we're going to grab the pause button when we pause the game. We're then going to basically set this menu to be either active or inactive. Okay, and we can actually toggle this active value based off of whatever it is that we had previously selected. So I can say pause menu dot set active is equal to not pause menu dot active self. Let me see, dot active self, which you can see comes up here. And what that'll do is it'll basically turn it on and off. So we can save this. So we'll just save this file. What we're going to have to do is have some object inside of our scene that manages this pause menu. Now we could use our game manager. You could attach this to this. But for this example, I'm just going to create an empty game object within the scene. So I'm going to create empty, and I'm going to call it pause menu. And add that script that we just wrote to that empty game object. So you should be able to click and drag that and assign it to, there we go, to that object. Now it's looking for the object, which is the actual canvas element. So you can drag the entire canvas element into this. And now when we hit play mode, the pause menu should disappear, right? And as we move around, if we hit the escape key, the pause menu comes up. All right. So with that created there, the next thing would be to actually make sure that the gameplay pauses. So right now, if we enter play mode and move around and I hit the escape key, you'll see that the enemy is still moving in my general direction. So try to run away far enough. And the other guy is still moving around as well. Now there's a couple of different ways we can pause the gameplay. So if I jump back into our script here and head into the code here, what we can do is check to see what the active state is of the pause menu. So we could say if and we'll check to see if pause menu dot active self is equal to true. We will set the time dot timescale equal to 0. Else, we'll set the time.timescale equal to 1. So what timescale does is it actually stops the frames from rendering in the game. So it actually basically pauses everything. But it pauses everything that is related to the update function. Okay, so it slows down everything that's related to that. If we have something that's moving on its own, apart from that, those things are going to continue to keep moving and not actually pause. So if I jump back into our scene here and we hit play and we move around, I'll hit the escape key and I didn't do something here. Let's see here. I don't think I saved my code. So let's save it and head back into the scene here. And if I hit the escape key, you'll see that this guy stops dead in his tracks. I can no longer move the player, as you could see before. That's what I was trying to show you before, but I forgot to save. But anyway, you'll see that the player stops dead in his tracks, but this guy that we created, this other type of enemy, keeps moving. So what we could do is actually augment his enemy code to edit that. So if I come back into here, I'm exiting play mode. Let's look at that enemy that we created last time. And what we could do here now is basically make it so that this has to have a time scale equal greater than 0 to be able to run this code. So we'll say time.timescale is greater than 0. Then this guy will start moving. And I'll just take this, move this bracket down to the bottom of my code. And save it. So now if I head back, hit the play button, and press escape, you'll see everybody pauses now. Pretty cool, right? All right, so the last thing would be a couple of functions to activate our buttons, which could go into our pause menu as well. So I'm going to bring back the pause menu code again. And I'm going to create a couple of functions outside of this update function. This first one will be a public, and they both have to be public so that we can access them with these buttons. So public void, and we'll call this continue. Or how about this? Unpause. Unpause. And we're also going to need another function here, public void, and we'll call this one quit game. And I don't know why I'm making these lowercase. There we go. And we'll add this back in here. Okay. So to quit the game, we could just say application dot quit. Okay, that's a function in Unity to be able to quit the game. The only way this works is when you build the game. So if you're in play mode and you hit the quit button, it's not going to do anything. So if you want to see if the quit button is working, you might want to put a debug log. And say quit. All right. Now the unpause is going to be a little bit different. In this one, we're going to want to set the time scale, right? So we're going to want to set the time scale back to 1. But we're also going to want to toggle the active self on the pause menu. So pause menu dot set active, and then we're going to set to false. All right, so if we save this and head back to the editor, what we need to do is set up these buttons now. So open up the pause canvas, and I'm going to select the continue button first. Scroll down to the button component of that, and then add the on-click event. And all I have to do now is drag this pause menu into here. I'll drag this game object into there. And any public functions on the pause menu script will be available. So this is the continue button. So we're going to click the unpause function here. And if I go to the quit button here, I'm going to go add an event for that. Drag and drop the pause menu game object. And then we will then select the quit game function. Now, one last thing that I want to do is utilize this event system. Now, what this event system allows us to do is cycle through any menu items that are inside of our pause menu. So what I can do is I can take the event system, and inside of the event system it'll say first selected, and if there's no first selected game object, then that means that the only thing that will work with the input on these buttons is the mouse input. But if I drag one of the options in here, like the continue button will be the first option available. So if I hit play, and then hit the escape button, everything pauses. If I push up and down, the highlight is kind of low, but you can see we can cycle through both of these, and I'll select quit, and you'll see that quit comes up here in the console. And if I go to continue, we unpause it. If I see it again, here we are again. Continue. So you can either click or use the mouse keys. And if you want it to be a little bit more apparent that these are being highlighted, the pressed color is the one that you're going to want to increase here. So I'm going to increase the darkness on the pressed color of the button component. And now if I hit play and then pause it again and press up and down, oh, actually maybe it's not pressed. It was selected. So selected was the color that I want to darken up. So I'm going to go to selected, and let's darken that up. That was my mistake. Alright, so now let's hit play, hit escape, and press the up and down key, and you'll see which one we have selected. Continue, escape, if I hit quit, quit, continue, continue. Pretty cool, right? So that's basically how you make a functioning pause menu. There's all sorts of other things you could do within this. You could have like an inventory system with different things that get activated when you pick up different items. When you select them, they get equipped to your character, that sort of thing as well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is there is a component that you can create here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create an image real quick inside of our UI. And I'm just going to remove that image component from this UI component that we just created. And I'm going to call this vertical layout. Now, vertical layout, there is a component that we can add to this, and if I do the search here and type in vertical layout group, we can add this component to this. And if I want, I can actually take my title text, and I should probably change this to title. Where did it go? There it is. change this to pause title. And what we'll do from here is grab everything that's inside of that and add to that vertical layout group. So if I select these and drag and drop them into here, it will try to nest these within one another. And I might have to change the justification on the pause menu so that it's left justified. Maybe I'll just grab the pause title out of this thing and leave it separate. And I'm going to just rearrange these real quick. Put my pause menu in the center. Grab my vertical layout group and move that here. And there we go. These two will always have the same spacing apart from one another. So I can either go less, go more, and it's dependent on how many things are actually in that group. All right, so I hope you found this video useful on creating pause menus and how to make your game pause. What I'd like for you to do is add a pause menu to your first-person game. So you can basically take these assets out of this lesson and bring it into there, or create them from scratch. It's completely up to you. And I'll see you in the next video.